Hi, everyone. It's Matthew with Dr. G in Technology. And today we're going to be talking about building that resume to prepare for the interview and to get the IT job of your choice. So we're also going to be looking at how Amazon looks for what they look for in their interview process, which is called the STAR method. We'll look at what Google looks for, which is the XYZ method, and then kind of what Indeed looks for in terms of what they expect in terms of your resume, because that's kind of where it all starts, right? So before we get too deep, certainly do us a favor, put your comments right down below and tell us what you like, what you don't like. That way we can adjust our content and help you throughout your IT journey. So I know I've needed help along the way, and that's what we're here for, is to help you now along the way in your IT career. Also go over and join the IT Village, where you'll see the link down below. And that's where you'll find other individuals like yourself, whether you're a newbie, changing careers, job jumper, what have you, you have questions and need some advice. That's where you'll find it over there in the IT Village. So let's get moving now. So I think most of this today is going to be a lot of screen sharing. So I'm going to minimize myself here in a second and then get over to what I actually want to share with you. And that is just some different techniques for your resume, as well as what some other companies look for, and in general, how you should research accordingly. So let's start sharing our screen here. And we're going to be looking up right here on Google. If you type in Indeed example resume and just hit enter, one of the first links you should see here is just some resume samples and templates to inspire your next application. This comes from Indeed. Now, Indeed is a major place where a lot of individuals, a lot of IT consulting, contracting companies, not just specific in IT, but in any industry, look for IT professionals right here in Indeed. So you'll certainly want to pay attention to a lot of their resources that they have and eventually get your resume uploaded. So let's just start by looking at some examples. So there are some tried and true things regarding the resume. And there are lots of tips and tricks out there. What I thought I would do with this specific link is to look at some example resumes. So there's one right here called IT project manager, right? Certainly some of those positions exist and on Indeed and everywhere else that you may be looking for a job, right? So highly coveted type of position. So this is obviously just an example that you're looking at on the screen. But where I want to go to immediately is that what's good about this particular example is that they do bullet their experiences and makes it very easy to read. In some cases, you kind of heard of the F type of structure, where you put your most words and experiences at the top bullets, and eventually kind of get minimal a bit further as you go down in the bullets, kind of like they've done here, right? And so we tend to read things in an F format, to where the first line's really going to capture our attention. If it does, then we're likely to read the second line, and maybe if our attention still stays, we'll read a bit more of the third line and beyond. So that is what's good about this particular resume. What I don't see here is a lot of quantifiable methods or measures or metrics or anything of that nature. I don't see any numbers, figures, anything telling us as a trained eye, someone who's interviewed a lot of people, what how much was your impact, So I read this and think to myself, so what, right? There's a lot of other candidates out there who probably have some other experiences and maybe followed a different path on their resume. So there are some rights and wrongs here that we see immediately. So again, this is just an example. I do like the bullet points. I do kind of like the F-style reading. Let's just hit the back button and look at a different sample resume that we might find in IT. Let's go to program manager, right? Plenty of program manager positions in IT. So it looks very similar, right? This is just kind of a dummy resume. But right away, what captures my eye is this 1.5 million plus, right? In 6 months, right? 40 individuals, 10%, 60%. I'm immediately seeing some metrics that help us understand by how much of a measure did you improve the company based on your level of effort, your tasks, and everything you've done. So there's a whole lot of other tips and tricks about resumes, but Indeed likely will be one of the places that you'll want to come to when it comes to uploading your resume. And I thought, well, let's just go straight to the source and see what they recommend, what they have. And so these are some of the tips that I like and don't like between just these two. The other thing I like on here is that they pretty much begin, a lot of the bullet points kind of begin with a verb. So if I look at this one here, right, coordinated, executed, recognized, those are all verbs, right? Things that are actionable. It just shows that you are able to do more than one thing. So collaborate, lead, managed, there's so many other verbs you can choose from, but they make your resume certainly very actionable. And so I do like that as well. So as far as a resume goes, what's good and what's bad, what was right or wrong, if you will. What makes this one really stand out is that it has verbs, it has metrics, it lets us know what's happening. This one doesn't follow the F style of reading as much, and that's okay. You really, you're trying to make it eye appealing, but more importantly, you're trying to make yourself stand out. So if you've got more and more metrics to add and measures and actionable items, then put those and don't worry about the F style of reading, right? So between those three major areas of making your resume actionable with verbs and readable and presentable to make somebody want to keep reading was really what I was after here today. So I'm going to close this, and looking at my screen, you should now see on Indeed top 8 effective tips for how to make your resume stand out. So you can put this in a search in Google, or just come straight to Indeed, look for this one as well. And they give you their 8 methods. All right. So you're getting it almost straight from the horse's mouth. Indeed is kind of speaking on behalf of, hundreds, if not thousands of hiring organizations who are coming to Indeed looking for IT professionals or new IT professionals or very experienced IT professionals such as yourself. So Indeed has come over here and said, yeah, these top 8 look, are some of the things that our clients want, because Indeed has many clients. Indeed themselves hires as well for their own needs. But this gives you an overview of kind of what some of the things that they want to consider, such as, put yourself in the hiring manager's shoes and what would you want to see out of your position. So basically what we're saying with this one is, we all have our boilerplate template resume, but for each position, we should really look at it from their perspective and say, what are they looking for in me? And how do I need to tailor my resume accordingly, right? And so that's kind of what these first couple bullets go over. Then you go over some other fine-tuning notes regarding, headers and objectives, as well as, skills, which I'm certainly sure many of you are aware of. If not, there are plenty of other tips and tricks on resumes, but I wanted to come here to show you kind of what the 900-pound gorilla of Indeed does and what they recommend, and B, just some examples of what looks good, what doesn't look so good in terms of what you would expect to see on a resume, because that's how all this process gets started, right? Coming into a new position or into the IT world is the resume. So we've talked about resumes. Let's move on to the interview process. And so with the interview process, they've kind of said, from what I've heard now, especially with the times that we're in with teleworking, is that the background now is your new business suit. Of course, there's what you're wearing, right? I'm not going for an interview right now. If it was, I'd be wearing probably a coat and tie, right? Just based on the positions I'm after. But they also say your background is a big part of it, right? So I've been hunting and pecking for a lot of different types of software that have virtual backgrounds, and pretty much, almost all of the collaboration virtual softwares have software um, organizations have this virtual background concept. I was filming some stuff in Prezi, which is a presentation kind of software, and they have video. They don't have virtual background, so I had to find something to integrate, which I have another video on that to help me create virtual backgrounds. So it's certainly not not a hard and fast, tried and true thing, but you certainly don't want a lot of distractions in the background if you can avoid it, right? So that's just kind of high level information, which you probably know already, but in case you hadn't heard that, that's this new concept that the new monkey suit now is not just what you're wearing, but it's what's behind you as well. So let's get some specific tips about researching the companies that you want to interview and go work for, right? So first up, let's get off of the Indeed one and let's go over to Amazon. This is a great article. And by the way, all these articles that I'm showing you here are probably less than a year old, give or take, from the time of this filming here. And so this one's from Amazon. And this is essentially recruiters telling us from Amazon, how to interview with Amazon, what they're looking for. And so I highly encourage you to read this, and this is coming straight from the Amazon staff. And I've heard a lot of things about interviewing with Amazon, but this article will pretty much tell you exactly what they're looking for. And if you come to the first two, it really gives you an idea of exactly how to hone in your skills in interviewing and preparing for interviewing with Amazon. So they look for a lot of behavioral based interview questions, meaning how would you act? What would you do in some type of scenario, right? But what I really like here is if you scroll down just a bit more and look at a method of answering, and that is the STAR method. Now, this isn't necessarily Amazon specific. I mean, I've seen other similar types of methods, but what does a STAR method mean? Well, if you look right here on bullet 2, it means that when you're answering your interview question, the situation, that's the S, is what you want to wrap yourself around. In other words, come up with some experience. Talk about the tasks that you were in charge of, and right there comes the verbs and the actions that were occurring and the results, right? So that STAR right there of the experience that you're about to tell them when they ask you a question. So whether it's behavioral based or if they're just kind of quizzing you on a right or wrong answer, be thinking of the STAR method. There's certainly other bullet points here to look at regarding Amazon, if Amazon's what you're after. But what I want to really mention here is that this is just one example of one company and how and what they look for in an interview. So the lesson learned here is to go onto your search engine, type in, the company you want to work for and interview methods and see if anything pops up, right? There's definitely usually blogs out there, people commenting about an interview that they just came out of from a certain organization. And so you'll kind of get a feel of what they're looking for, maybe what to say and what not to say, how to say it, etc. So that's interviewing with Amazon, right? Their STAR method. Let's look over at Google, right? This is another article that talks about tips and tricks on interviewing with Google. And Google, I've heard from quite some time. This one has been a very, very much a universal truth. And I've never interviewed with Google, but I have heard this over the years regarding the XYZ method of answering their questions. And so the XYZ method is if you're asked a behavioral situational type of question in an interview and you're getting ready to respond, this is the kind of similar response that you'd be looking for, right? So you may not be able to get all letters such as, Y and Z, but try to get as much as possible. So when you're answering, you can say something like, you increased customer satisfaction by 22% as a result of implementing a new design process that you worked on with your team, right? So you're giving them metrics, you're telling them the results of what you accomplished, and you're kind of telling them the process in terms of how you did it, right? So be sure that your answers are also tying to your resume, right? Because you didn't get the interview likely without the resume first. So the two should absolutely match, right? So Amazon has their STAR method, Google has the XYZ method. Every organization out there has their own method. Some of it's formulaic like this. Some of it's not so formulaic, where it's kind of more based on who's interviewing you, right? Because everybody interviews differently. The interviewee and the interviewer relationship is a one-time thing when you get that interview. So those are the tips and tricks that I wanted to share with you today regarding, how to interview. Certainly do your research. I've also shared some resources, these articles right down below in the links. So be sure to click on those so that you have some solid examples, and we will see you on the next video.
As a reminder, click the like button, leave us your comments, let us know what you'd like to hear more of. Also, click the subscribe button and the bell button so that you're immediately alerted anytime a new video is published. Be sure to join our IT Village, which is the link to communicate with others within our YouTube channel over on our platform so that you can get answers to your questions. And lastly, in the upper right corner of our YouTube channel, click the free download of How Much Can I Make in IT?